Hello scholars, and welcome to lesson 12 in our reading mastery book. Today is the last day that we're going to be reading about old Henry and Tim. So love them or hate them, they're going away for tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed learning about geese and learning a little bit about the seasons of the earth and how the earth spins and stuff like that. But today we are on lesson 12. So everyone find lesson 12 in their textbooks. We're going to start it off like we started off every day with our vocabulary words. Find lesson 12 in your textbook. Touch column 1. Number 1 says polar bear. What words? Word 2 says ice flow. What word? Word 3 is a name. It says umu. What name? Word 4 is also a name. It says ulak. What name? Good. And number 5 says shoulder. What word? Let's read those words the fast way. Word 1, what word? Number 2, what words? Word 3, what name? Word 4, what name? Word 5, what word? Very good. Find column 2. Part of these words are underlined, so the first time that we're going to say the underlined part and then the whole word, and then we'll do it the fast way. So it's going to go like this. Word 1, what's the underlined part? Pebbled. What's the whole pebble? What's the whole word? Pebbled. And then we'll go on to number 2, okay? Word 1, what's the underlined part? What's the whole word? Word 2, what's the underlined part? What's the whole word? Word 3, what's the underlined part? What's the whole word? Word 4, what's the underlined part? What's the whole word? Very good. Let's go through it the fast way. Word 1, what word? Word 2, what word? Word 3, what word? Word 4, what word? Very good. Find column 3. Number 1, what words? Number 1 says, killer whale. What words? Number 2 says Eskimo. What word? Word 3 says spear. What word? Word 4 says January. What word? Let's read those words the fast way. Word 1, what word? Word 2, what word? Word 3, what word? Word 4, what word? Very good. Find column 4. Number 1 says walrus. What word? Word 2 says kayak. What word? Word 3 says sun. What word? Word 4 says restless. What word? Let's read those words the fast way. Word 1, what word? Word 2, what word? Word 3, what word? Word 4, what word? Very good. I'm thinking of a word. I'm thinking of a word that is a noun. It is a proper noun. So it starts with a capital letter. It has 2 syllables. It is in the first column, and there are 4 O's in the word. That's right. It is Umu, who is a character in the next story after Old Henry and Tim. But we will not be reading that story. We're going to take a break from reading mastery for a little while after this story. Okay, so I'm going to read part B, then I'm going to read part C. You're going to read part C again at your house to a parent, a sibling, a pet, a stuffed animal, or to yourself. Okay? All right, here we go. Facts about Eskimos. In the next lesson, you will read about Eskimos. The winters are very cold where Eskimos live. Eskimos live near the North Pole in Canada and Alaska. Alaska is a state of the United States, but it is far north of the main part of the United States. Touch Alaska on the map. Do you see that, scholars? So the majority of the United States is below Canada. Do you see that on the map? It's green. There's a big chunk of land up by northern Canada called Alaska. In the United States, that also has that land. So that is a part of the United States. It's a little bit like Hawaii that also is not connected to the main part of the continent. It's much more southern. Right, okay, let's keep reading. Picture 2 shows an Eskimo with some things that Eskimos use. The Eskimo is holding a fishing pole in one hand. The Eskimo is holding a fishing spear in the other hand. The Eskimo is wearing warm clothes that are made from animal skins. Near the Eskimo is a sled. The dogs that pull the sleds are called sled dogs. We'll learn about those guys more later on this year. The boat that Eskimos use in the summer is called a kayak. Make sure you can read these words: Eskimo, kayak, Alaska, spear. I know that you guys can all read those words because we already practiced them. Okay, here we go. Find part C in your textbook. The error limit for this story is 13 errors, so be watching because Ms. Halverson has not been having very good luck with her errors lately. Okay, everybody touch the title. Everybody, what's the title? Back to Canada. There were hundreds of geese on Crooked Lake and in the fields around it. Henry and Tim circled the lake twice before Henry spotted their flock. Then he pointed his wing toward the south shore and said, "There's our flock right there." Excuse me. The two geese flew very low over the flock and honked loudly. As they made a sharp turn and headed back, Henry could hear some more of the geese in the flock saying things like, "Who are those geese?" and "Doesn't that goose look a lot like Henry?" Tim and Henry landed right in the middle of the flock. Oh, how the geese honked and flapped their wings. Tim's mother flapped her wings so hard she sent little feathers flying all over the place. Her dad rushed over and gave Tim a big old goose kiss. "My son," he said, "I didn't think we'd ever see you again." Tim had tears in his eyes. As Tim ran off with his mom and dad, Henry's friends formed a big circle around him and honked so loudly that you could hear them for miles. A few minutes later, some of his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren came from their flocks to give Henry big old goose kisses. Who did Tim go off with after he and old Henry landed? His parents, that's right. Who are the first geese to give Henry a big welcome? It says his friends. Let's keep reading. One of Henry's grandchildren said, "We didn't think you were coming, but we knew we would see you next summer when we went north again." "Yes," a great-grandchild said, "but now you'll be able to fly back to Canada with us next spring." Henry started to say, "Oh, I don't know." But then he smiled and said, "Sure, well, I'll go back to Canada in the spring." And that's what happened. Henry spent the winter in the warm Florida sun, napping, eating, swimming, and visiting with his friends and family. About 2 times every week, he would go flying with some of the geese who were less than a year old. He would always make sure that Tim went with them. Henry would give the young geese practice at flying in a V. Henry would honk out orders as the V would swoop over Crooked Lake, very low and very fast. Once in a while, Henry would have a sore wing after flying with the young geese, but his wing wasn't too bad. So what did Henry spend the winter doing? It says, napping, eating, swimming, visiting with his friends and family. How old were the geese that he practiced flying with, besides Tim? Less than a year, yep. Let's keep reading. Henry wasn't really worried about his wing because the trip back north was a lot easier than the trip down to Florida. The trip north started in January, but the geese wouldn't reach Big Trout Lake in Canada until the middle of April. At the beginning of January, Tim, Henry, and all the geese began feeling restless. They wanted to fly north. 2 days later, the first flocks took off. Over the next few days, Henry watched hundreds and hundreds of flocks take off. Finally, Henry's flock was ready. It flew into the sky and joined other flocks that were leaving Crooked Lake, Reedy Lake, and the other nearby lakes. The geese flew in 4 great V's. The sky was filled with geese. Henry's flock followed the warm weather as it moved north. The flock would stay at a landing place long enough to make sure that the next landing place would not be frozen. Finally, in the middle of April, the flock arrived at Big Trout Lake. There was honking and flapping as the geese met other flocks that stayed at Big Trout Lake during the summer. 2 days after the flock landed at Big Trout Lake, Tim and Henry said goodbye. It was time for Tim and the other geese that were almost a year old to form their own flock and fly off to Sandy Lake. The young geese would spend the summer at that lake. Before Tim left, he gave Henry a big old goose kiss and said, "Thank you for everything you've done. And I hope that I'll see you next winter at Crooked Lake." Henry said, "I'll be there." Oh, how nice. I'm glad that we had a happy ending for our friends, Tim and Old Henry. Okay, we are on our very last page of the packet. Can you believe it? All right, it says Lesson 12. What can characters teach us? It says, choose either Tim or Old Henry and think about some of his positive personality traits. Think about when the character acts this way and why. Think, what can this character teach me about living to be a more virtuous person? Okay. So, are you going to choose Tim or Old Henry? Because they're both rather virtuous, aren't they? Okay, I'm going to choose Old Henry just because I like him. He's kind of been my favorite guy throughout the story. I know that most of you guys like Tim, so maybe you'll choose Tim. I'm going to put Old Henry. Do you see how many lines there are, friends? I think that you can get 2 examples in there because there's so many lines. Old Henry can teach me to be virtuous. Old Henry can teach me to be virtuous through his use of justice. Old Henry is kind to Tim when he teaches Tim to fly, flies with him to Florida, and when he stuck up for him, and when he fought a fox for Tim. Do you see how long my answer is? That's a good answer. Maybe you should try to fill up your blocks too. Okay, so 3 pieces of textual evidence or character traits. I have 3 pieces of textual evidence because I have when he teaches Tim to fly, when he flies with him to Florida, and when he fought a fox for Tim. Grab my tea there. Okay, a thoughtful text-to-text or text-to-self connection, yes. Capitalization, proper punctuation, yes. 5 out of 5 for Miss Halverson. Great. So I expect you all, to get 5 out of 5s as well. If you are confused, there are some really tricky lessons in this packet. If this one makes you a little bit confused, then make sure that you're coming to my office hours from 9 to 10 in the morning or from 9 to 10 in the morning or 1:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon. Okay, friends? Awesome. I will see you all later. Bye-bye.